Namaste. What's up, astrology adventurers? So I want to talk about the Navamsha chart today because you'll find pretty dramatic quotes in classic texts that say things like the Navamsha chart is of paramount importance, and you might wonder, like, why? What's it all about? How did it get this status? What does it mean? How can we make use of it? So lots to talk about. I'm Paul Manley. You're watching Light on Vedic Astrology. Most people typically know that the Navamsha is considered the marriage chart. And that's for sure. I mean, definitely. If someone's birth time is correct, then you should see that event in the Navamsha chart. The dashas should clearly indicate marriage by the dasha lord being placed in the ascendant, aspecting the seventh house, or placed in the seventh house, or having some connection with Venus. Any case, that is tried and true. You'll find this over and over. But then you hear, my teacher, K.N. Rao, says a lot more dramatic things about the Navamsha, like interpreting the natal chart without incorporating the Navamsha chart is equivalent to an abortion. Equivalent to an abortion. I mean, that is a dramatic statement. I think he makes these statements to get our attention. Like, okay, all right, this is not just about marriage. There's a lot more. So this implies that they work hand in hand. The natal chart, the Navamsha, they're like hitched together, like a horse with a wagon. The wagon's not going anywhere without the horse, right? The horse goes in a particular direction, it has the velocity, the momentum, but the wagon, that has treasure, that has the goods, right? So another way to think of the Navamsha chart and the natal chart is the tree. The Navamsha chart is the fruit of the tree. So you're not going to have fruit without a tree. So they work hand in hand. And that's what he means. So the earlier quote I mentioned is from the Briyat Prashur Hora Shastra. Sage Prashur says, the Navamsha chart is paramount in importance and should be used to determine the strength and weaknesses of planets, especially for marriage and dharma. So strength and weaknesses of planets. That implies that the Navamsha, the strength of planets in the Navamsha chart is important for determining the outcome of that planet. What's its real strength? So here's the thing. We're not supposed to be looking at the natal chart in isolation. That's what Karen Rao's earlier quote was saying. Or the Navamsha chart in isolation. They work hand in hand. The natal chart shows the physical, tangible, external aspects of our life expressed. The Navamsha chart is more subtle. It represents our hidden potential, our inner strength, our real strength, you might say. So how can we use this? K.N. Rao often says, we have to look at the strength of the planet in the natal chart and weigh it again in the Navamsha chart. So in other words, the Navamsha chart is made use of as a measure of strength. If the planet's in the natal chart is exalted, let's say it's in its best sign, but it's very weak in a different sign of a great enemy in the Navamsha chart, well, then that represents that means a way for us to refine our interpretation. The placement of the planet in a particular sign and the weakness that indicates represents something that can be useful in interpreting the chart. In other words, Venus debilitated, for instance, doesn't mean you can't be in a relationship or you can't get married. Venus debilitated in the Navamsha can represent uh, intimacy issues. You feel uncomfortable getting too close to somebody. So that becomes an issue. Like, I want you close, but not too close. Kind of this push-pull kind of dynamic. I mean, so this kind of subtlety, this refinement of, let's say Venus is exalted in the natal chart, but it's debilitated in the Navamsha chart. That can represent the issues, the dynamics, the challenge that that planet represents, and important ways to work with it. In other words, if you're able to tell somebody that this is an issue, then they very likely going to confirm it, right? And then that becomes something for them to have more awareness around and can make steps. So this is how we can use astrology for counseling, and how we can use an Navamsha chart for a refined understanding of what we're seeing in the natal chart. Like in the chart of Amitabh Bachchan, the great Bollywood actor who began his career in his Jupiter Dasha, late 20s. And Jupiter is exalted in his natal chart. It's exalted again in the Navamsha chart. So that's a condition called Vargotama. So that means, that's what he launched his professional acting career. That's when he had his breakthrough roles and launched him into stardom. So we can see that also, that this looks strong in the natal chart. But in the Navamsha chart, it's also strong. So a planet, and that's a hint that there is even a term like Vargotama, being a planet in the natal chart, also being in the same sign in the Navamsha chart. That's called Vargotama. And that gets special strength, first tier strength, you might say. So a debilitated planet in Vargotama, it acts like exalted. K.N. Rao often says a Vargotama planet is like exalted. So measuring the strength in relation, is a planet at the same level? Is it maintaining its strength and in the natal chart when we compare it in the Navamsha? So this is this pairing, this way to work back and forth, the natal chart, Navamsha chart. So I remember when I was studying with Ranganath Rao in southern India, in Mysore, he was emphasizing to me that the Navamsha chart shows the future trends. Just like the tree's future trend is to bear fruit. So the Navamsha can show how that fruit is matured or ripened. So this future trends, it is looking, this is, you could say, where the planets are headed, where they're going towards. That sign position in the Navamsha can represent the qualities of where that planet is going. Does that mean that the Navamsha chart kicks in like in the latter half of life? I've been asked this question a lot. That's not how I work with the Navamsha. It doesn't kick in. It's always kicked in my opinion. They're not to be used in isolation. The dynamic between the natal chart and the Navamsha is always operative. The natal chart predominates, the Navamsha chart refines and deepens. It represents deep mysteries. So this is how we can start to work with the Navamsha chart in a deeper way to compare strength. It also shows our deeper purpose, our dignity, where our real purpose is. So that's another look at the Navamsha. You can also use it for ninth house matters, which Dharma is. Fortune. It also can represent fortune. Ninth house matters, Bhagya, fortune, Dharma, purpose, as well as foreign travel. Ninth house represents foreign travel. So we can see these things also specifically in the Navamsha. So many uses, not just marriage, and not only like the quote that I mentioned of Sage Prasha, not only the strength and weaknesses of planets, but also specifically marriage and also for ninth house matters like Dharma. So that's a little peek into the Navamsha chart, how we can utilize this this amazing divisional chart, key divisional chart. And so we'll stop here, and I look forward to our next video coming soon. Namaste.